everyone, and welcome to AUSU's Undergraduate Research Week. We've heard from many of you that you want more resources and opportunities surrounding research. And so one of the things we're doing this week is introducing you to people who've either done research as undergraduates or are connected to undergraduate research. So today I want to introduce you to Shawn Lewenza, who's one of the faculty members here at AU that supervises undergraduate research projects. Welcome, Shawn.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So if there is a student who's interested in doing a research project but doesn't have an idea about what they want to do, what should they do and how should they explore that?
Well, most students usually come to me with some sort of idea about what they're interested in. So I would encourage people to really do some background research around a topic. Maybe it's from a course, could be from outside of their courses. It could be from anywhere, and do some reading and explore the faculty profiles at FST in the different centers. Get to know what they kind of do. There doesn't have to be a great alignment with what they do and what you do, but at least you know what might be available, because we're really trying to upgrade our sites. There's a whole new website coming, and for sure the project pages is going to be updated. There's going to be lots of examples of what past students have done. So that would be, most students have seen that page, but the new one would be more helpful. And then approach one of the coordinators with, some sort of brief written idea of what you're curious about, but you don't have to have it all figured out, right? You just have to have some sort of direction.
Okay.
Because if you come to me with no idea, just saying, I want to do a research project, I'm going to ask you to figure out a topic, right, that interests you, because it has to align with what you're interested in.
Okay. But if a student has a topic and they're not quite sure where to go, that's something that they can explore with you. They can email and ask questions.
Oh, they can easily, yes. If they have even the faintest of topics and they're kind of struggling, I will help them. If they're coming to me for biology or environmental science or science, 495s, yes, we will help them flush it out. Okay,
cool. And so some students are a little bit intimidated with emailing a professor that they haven't known. It's funny because as a student counselor, I talk to all of you and you're all very approachable, I have to say. But if a student you don't know is emailing you about potentially supervising a project, what information do you want them to include and what do you want to see in that email?
Okay. I have a great reference to give you on this topic, but it might be more relevant for contacting a supervisor for graduate school. But there's an article in Science Magazine, and it was written by my colleague, and it's called Dear Dr. Neufeld. And in that article, he talks about ways of approaching your professor about, that's more geared towards research projects in grad school, but it still applies in general, and it still applies for undergraduate research projects. If you're contacting a potential supervisor, that's a little bit different than contacting me as a coordinator, right? Because I'm going to help you determine who's going to be your supervisor. It's not really your job to go out and find a project and a supervisor. We'll help you do. We will help you do that. But if you are contacting people as supervisors, there are ways to, common things you should do, like get their name correct and make sure you really know what their research area is about, so that your interests align with theirs. Otherwise, if there's not those basic kind of factors initially, they're not going to have too much interest. And that article really, it just gives a simple example of a letter to a professor seeking a research project. And then, he gives the letter and then he explains why he recommends writing a letter in that way. So it's really, I thought it was really helpful, because a lot of times it goes wrong.
That's fair. Yeah. So as someone who supervises project courses, what do you wish all students knew before going into one? What is advice that you think would benefit any student who's interested in doing one of these projects?
As someone who supervises one, well, they are flexible. The courses are very flexible in terms of both what the projects are and how they're evaluated. In my case, I tend to have, well, there's two kinds of projects. So you can do a biology 495 that is a research project, or a biology 495 that is a literature review type of project.
Mm.
We prefer that you get some actual research experience. So it could be in a lab, it could be in the field, it could be at home on a computer doing data analysis, or it could be a literature review type of project. It's kind of, I'm getting off topic a little bit, but if you do continue to 496, that one we really want you to have an actual experimental kind of setup, right? But for me, I want people to really get that experience of doing research, of generating hypothesis, of learning how to do a literature search. And a literature search is one thing. There's so much data, like getting overwhelmed with all the data that you will probably get overwhelmed with, because there's so much information, right? So going through that rite of passage and learning how to decipher what's relevant to me and synthesizing information from a lot of information. But you will be guided through as much as you need to be, right? You won't be left alone if in most cases. There are some occasional lapses in supervision, but it's a real priority for a lot of people to make sure that everyone gets as much support as they need throughout their project.
That's cool. So I know for students who want to go on to grad school, their grades are important because someone's going to look at that. And I know for some students that can be a source of anxiety. How do you evaluate one of these courses? And from an academic point of view, like what would succeeding at one of these courses look like?
Yeah. Well, first off, most students do well in these courses because they're initiating it and it's a project they ultimately align with their own interests. So I think most people do well. How are they evaluated? There's usually a research proposal as one of the assessments that might be worth 25% of your mark. It's something you submit within the first 4 to 6 weeks. And it's your introductory reading and you're providing some background information. You're introducing the problem that you're working on. There may be a hypothesis. If you're doing experimental work, you'll describe the experimental methods. You won't have any results, but you're laying the framework for what you're going to do. And if at that point it's early on enough that if it needs some refocusing or redirection, you could get that support from your supervisor. And then you would go on to do the research part during the next few months. But at the end, you would submit a final research project. So that would be an extension of that proposal where now you're fleshing out the results section with the results that you have, the data, the analysis, the interpretation. So that would be the large component of the mark generally, let's say 50%. We're also encouraging students to provide an oral presentation. So they might do like a PowerPoint presentation to a smaller audience, 20 minutes long, and they're just giving the big picture overview of what their project was about, the kinds of data, the results that they found. It's really important to develop your science communication skills. So even if you're going from a room of 3 people, it's probably going to be, you're going to be nervous, and it's going to be a different experience than research, reading, and writing. And then sometimes we have marks, just a small component of marks just for like attendance and progress, like you check in monthly with a supervisor if you agree to that at the start. Or, are you showing up doing the kind of work and putting in the hours that, you might be expect of you to get the work done. So those are the way that we evaluate it. And that also is flexible, right? Depending on the situation, it can go in different directions, but those are the general components that we have.
And that's like agreed upon at the start of the class, so everyone's clear about the expectations. Is that it?
The first thing we do is we agree on a contract, and the contract states this is what you're going to do, and this is how we're going to evaluate it, and we agree upon it. I asked the student, how about this as a layout? We have a proposal, a research project, an oral presentation for this percentage of the grades. Does that sound good to you? And the student agrees, and then we say, okay, so they know right away what they're accountable for. So that's the very first thing we do within the first week or 2.
This has been really informative. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, you're welcome.